Kia ora tātou katoa. No mai, haere mai, and welcome to this special online hui hosted by Creative New Zealand with support from PANNZ and Auckland Live. Ko Delina Wehi Peihana tōku ingoa he uri a hau no Ngāti Tūkorehe me Ngāti Raukawa Hoki. Welcome. I'm Delina and I'm here to facilitate today's kōrero with Creative New Zealand representatives. It's wonderful to have you all here to join us this morning. I'd like to also acknowledge the wonderful work of Joe Randerson hosting the previous two hui. E mihi ana ki a koe, Joe. To open today's kōrero, I'd like to begin with a karakia. Karakia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kine kine ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Kia ora anō and welcome. Thank you to those of you who are tuned in on Facebook Live or YouTube. We welcome you to today's special edition, Online Hui with Creative New Zealand. We're in week 3 of Alert Level 4 and the lockdown, and we do send all our aroha out to you all. We hope you and your whānau whānui, your friends and flatmates are keeping well and safe inside your bubbles. Now today's kōrero comes hot on the heels of Creative New Zealand's announcement yesterday of their full package for funding. Phase 1 of the fund is $16 million investment into the arts up until the end of June 2020. We have 3 wonderful panellists joining us this morning from Creative New Zealand. We have the Arts Council Deputy Chair, Karen Rangi, David Pannett, who is Creative New Zealand's Senior Manager for Strategy and Engagement, and joining us again is Kath Cardiff, who was here at our first online hui, who is Creative New Zealand's Senior Manager for Arts Development Services. So today, as well as delving into the details of the resilience grants that opened yesterday as part of the emergency response funding package, we'll also be hearing about Creative New Zealand's wider response to COVID-19, including the organisation's work to advocate for the value of the arts through this crisis and ensure that the arts sector stays in conversation with the government as the government continues to develop its response to COVID-19 for Aotearoa. So how this panel will work will be we will hear from each of the 3 panellists first, and then we will have time to answer your questions. So we'll be answering questions live again today. So this session is for you. Please do put your questions in the Facebook Live comments or in the YouTube comments. And we have Paul and Jasmine from Creative New Zealand at the other end to pick up your questions and pass them on to us. So we've got 90 minutes together today for this hui. And also this hui will be recorded and transcribed so that people can access it later if they were unable to join us today. Additionally, I'd like to pass on from Creative New Zealand that there will be some specific Zoom online hui held after this hui. In particular, there is a Zoom hui, a Zui, for Pacific Arts practitioners tomorrow at 11 a.m. and for Ngā Toi Māori on Friday at 11 a.m. And you can find all these details on the Creative New Zealand Facebook page and website. So to kick us off today, I'd like to welcome our first panellist, Karen Rangi. Karen has been Deputy Chair of the Arts Council since 2017, and she is a committed supporter of arts and culture with a particular passion for dance, music and cultural history of the Cook Islands, where her whānau hails from. She is an experienced governance practitioner who is also a member of other boards in the arts, including Te Papa, Radio New Zealand and the Pacific Cooperation Broadcasting Limited. And along with this governance experience, Karen also brings professional experience as a qualified accountant and auditor to the Arts Board table, along with facilitation and community development skills. Kia ora, Karen, welcome.
Kia ora, Delina, and kia ora, everybody. It's great to have you here with us this morning as we come to you in partnership with our mates at PANNZ and Auckland Live. And I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of the Arts Council to talk through this first phase of our CNZ emergency response package alongside David and Kath. The package has been put together not only in response to this extraordinary situation that we find ourselves in, all of us, but because it does reinforce our long-term strategy that is based on the importance of the value of the arts. And we think arts are even more important during this crazy time. While applications opened yesterday, as Delina said, we've been signalling over the last couple of weeks what our intentions were, as we recognise the importance of saying to the sector that we will do whatever we can to help. You'll appreciate that the team has been furiously developing the underpinning processes that are necessary to make this response package work for you and for us. And because we recognise how much this has knocked the sector for six, and that for many that knock has been immediate and devastating. So Kath and David will be able to answer questions on the process and other work that we're doing here. But I wanted to give the sector assurance on behalf of the Arts Council that we are here, that we are constantly taking the temperature on the impact on the sector and making strategic decisions to do our part to help the sector both recover and flourish. And finally, we're clear, as we've always been clear, that the strengthening of the arts sector is a key factor in strengthening New Zealand anytime, but most of all at a time like this. And we're emphasising this point with everyone who will listen. So again, great to have you all here today, and we're looking forward to hearing your questions. Thanks, Delina.
Kia ora, Karen. Thank you very much. It's fantastic to hear about the work that's happening at the higher level, as well as the work that's been going into organising the emergency response package to be ready for us as the artists on the ground. I know that everyone's going to be very interested to hear from you, Kath, but before we get to you, I'd like to introduce David Pennett, who leads Creative New Zealand's strategy and engagement team. Now, this team delivers advocacy initiatives aimed at providing the value of the arts, manages communications with the arts sector, the public and the media, and develops policy and performance advice for the Arts Council and government. David joined Creative New Zealand in early 2015 from the Ministry of Health, where he managed relationships with a range of health agencies, provided governance advice to district health boards and ministers, and delivered a variety of special projects for the health sector. David was also a lawyer. He worked for the University of Otago and British Telecom, and also spent a few good years working part-time in music stores, back when those were a thing. Kia ora, David.
Delina, kia ora tātou katoa. Nā mihi mai aha ki te whānau o ngā toi. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to everyone today, just about some of the work, the broader work we're doing at CNZ around our response to COVID-19. So I'll talk about a couple of things. First of all, our advocacy response, and then briefly touch on how we are engaging with government and putting our best foot forward with them for the arts during the crisis. So first of all, our advocacy response. The first phase of our response is being rolled out now, which is really exciting. I'll talk about a few of the key elements. The big one is a new public-facing national arts advocacy campaign, which is going to be launching this Friday on the 17th of April, which we're excited about. And it's based around the idea of being thankful for art. So the purpose of the campaign is to promote the value of the arts, but doing that with having artists front and centre. It'll be demonstrating how important the arts are for the well-being of New Zealanders right now. So our goal here, we want to increase public understanding of the value of the arts. So that will help us achieve our long-term aim of growing public support for the arts community, and particularly as we emerge from this time of crisis, important more than ever. So what kind of things will you see? Well, we'll be kicking off with an amazing 30-second, what we're calling a hero video, that features a wide range of artists, as well as some well-known and everyday New Zealanders who'll show the different ways in which the arts can help us while we're in lockdown, providing joy, escape, inspiration, hope, all of those things that we know the arts do so well. We've also commissioned 15 artists to produce a work or a story reflecting or responding to lockdown, which we're going to be sharing on social media over the course of the campaign. And you'll see one of those stories about every second day. Also throughout the first 4 weeks of the main 4 weeks of the campaign, we'll be sharing 15 ways that the public can continue to engage with, support or participate in the arts. So included in that too is the opportunity for the public to share their own thankful for art reflections. We're working with prominent artists in New Zealand as well to write some op-ed pieces on the value of the arts during the crisis and recovery. So in addition to commissioning those, we're also pitching ideas for stories with an arts focus to mainstream media outlets as well. So that's a rough outline of the campaign. We're also working on a range of other things in the advocacy space, including providing local government with guidance on ways to support its arts communities and continue to build that community engagement with arts and culture. We're supporting Boosted to establish an online live streaming platform that'll have a complementary fundraising function. You've probably seen news from Boosted about that, which is very exciting too. So that's going to be launching Friday week, so on the 24th of April. And we're also identifying the ways in which we might be able to shore up support from the arts community, from partners and collaborators, people like foundations, trusts, and other funders. That will flow on from the initial part of the advocacy campaign as we move into a second phase. And yeah, it's really important for us to be able to press those messages, not only with government, which I'll talk about shortly, but also with all the other people who support the arts as well. You know, it's a really rich community of support that sits around the arts. So we want to make sure that all supporters are hearing those messages. So I'll talk quickly now about the work we're doing engaging with government, which is a really important and complementary strand to our advocacy that's sitting alongside the campaign. So we're working really hard to keep the arts in the national conversation at government levels as well. Through the crisis, the Ministry for Culture and Heritage has had a really strong, keen appetite for information about how badly the arts sector has been impacted. And we've been feeding that through to them as it comes to hand. We're also working on advice to ministers about what support the sector will need in both the short and medium terms to help them get through, to adapt and to thrive as well. So we're helping them work through that advice alongside our colleagues from the 15 or so other government-funded cultural agencies, and really pressing the need for a strong response from government to support the sector in the emergency response phase and then into recovery as well. We're providing advice of our own directly to ministers on impacts too, in writing and face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom as well. So it's hard to kind of see beyond the economic impact sometimes in these kinds of discussions, mainly because it's so huge and all-encompassing. But it was great to see we caught the part of the Prime Minister and Minister Robertson's post-cabinet briefing yesterday. And Minister Robertson was really talking about continuing the wellbeing approach. And he said what that means is that we look not just at our own financial well-being, but also our well-being as a people. And he also said, importantly, that the PM has been very keen to make sure that he's aware of the impact on the arts sector. And of course, he's an Associate Arts Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage alongside Minister Sepuloni too. So those are all encouraging signs. So we're continuing to work with the ministry and get advice to ministers about the importance of a really strong, robust response for the arts and cultural sector to the COVID crisis. So I might wrap things up there and pass you back to Delina.
Kia ora, David. Thank you very much. It's fascinating to hear about the different levels of advocacy that we're needing to work through at this time, both advocacy at the governmental level, bearing in mind, as you were saying, that financial impacts will be hitting the arts, not just through our arts funding, but also through the other aspects of funding that all of our organisations draw from, trusts, foundations, sponsorship. All of this is going to be a new terrain and difficult as we're moving forward from this time. But also the idea of advocacy within the public space to keep at the front of the mind to within our public the value of the arts and events and how they can stay engaged and learn from artists at that this time. Already we can see across social media many artists generously giving of their time to provide hope and joy and entertainment in the social media space. Interesting to hear about the boosted platform. So there's lots for us to take forward at this time. But now I'd like to hand over to Kath Cardiff, who will be explaining to us a little bit about the Creative New Zealand emergency response funding that opened yesterday on the website. I'm sure I have seen that some people have already applied for the emergency response grant. So this is a great opportunity to hear more about these funds. Also, I do encourage anybody with questions to keep them coming through. We've got a track of some of the questions that have come in already, and we'll be coming to those after we hear from Kath. So I'd like to introduce Kath again. Kath Cardiff is the Senior Manager Arts Development at Creative New Zealand, and she leads all the teams who run the funding programs and assessments for funding. This includes both the Tōtara and Kahikatea investment programs for arts organisations, arts grants and special opportunities for artists, and initiatives such as the Venice Biennale and the Toi Rangatahi funds. Prior to working at Creative New Zealand, Kath was a dancer and choreographer, a producer, director, and set up her own arts management company for dance and theatre. Kia ora, Kath.
Kia ora, Delina. Tēnā koutou katoa a te marie and ngā mihi nui for tuning into this hui today. I'm going to go into some details about the 3 funds that we opened yesterday to assist the arts sector to revive and thrive during this extraordinary situation that has been imposed on us by the virus COVID-19. But before I do that, I would just like to acknowledge my colleagues at Creative New Zealand, especially those in the arts development team, many of whom have been literally burning the midnight oil to bring these new programs to fruition. It's a privilege for me to lead these people. They're so dedicated and hardworking. And I'd also like to give a big shout out to our comms team, who I think have had some time off over Easter, maybe. I certainly hope so. But they have been simply outstanding. Ngā mihi nui kia kaha. So as I outlined in the first hui that we have responded to the situation by announcing an emergency response package, which comprises a first phase of $16 million with funding opening yesterday and to be distributed to the sector through to 30 June 2020. And after that, we anticipate that there will be a second phase, and who knows, maybe even a third, as we keep reinventing our response to respond to the dynamic situation that we're all in. So some details about the 3 specific things that we're offering between now and the end of June. Initially, it has 2 components. One is resilience grants, and the second is short-term relief for our investment clients. And I'll deal with them one by one. So resilience grants have 2 components. They're targeted to eligible artists, arts practitioners, groups, and arts organisations to help them recover, maintain, and develop their practice in a completely changed environment. And there are 2 opportunities within this package. Arts continuity grants for up to $50,000 support short-term arts projects and arts organisations, including groups and collectives that changed an evolving environment as a result of COVID-19. And the second is the emergency relief grant, which provides temporary relief for independent artists and arts practitioners who may be part of an arts organisation, including groups and collectives, and who meet our eligibility criteria. The short-term relief for investment clients, for existing investment clients, and on top of their existing funding, has priority for those materially negatively impacted by COVID-19 to help them stabilise their business and remain viable. And I'm going to go into some detail about each of these now. All this information is available on our website, so you don't feel you have to take notes or anything. It's all there for everybody to access, including links to phone number and email, where we have people ready and waiting to answer any questions that you might have and that I might not be able to answer today. So the Resilience Grants Arts Continuity up to $50,000. This is for short-term projects. That is, they need to be completed by the 30th of September 2020. And it's for projects either new or reframed from the past that you may have had in the system before we went into our lockdown, or a stage of a project that can be delivered within the changed and evolving environment as a result of COVID-19. And these projects are designed to support creation and or presentation of new work, research, creative and professional development, promotion and distribution. The projects need to achieve one of the following things: sustaining careers for artists, practitioners, groups and organisations who aren't investment clients, development of arts practice, innovation in the arts, and opportunities for diverse communities to access and participate in high quality arts experiences. It excludes international travel and needs to comply with whatever the current government guideline is for the alert status that we're at the time of decision making. Now, I realise that that's ambiguous for everybody, but you need to imagine the best and plan for the worst. So if, for instance, level 4 lockdown were to continue, think about what that might mean for this project that you want to do. However, there's a high likelihood that next week, and I think the Prime Minister's due to make an announcement next Monday, that we will go back to either a level 3 or level 2 scenario. But this is pure speculation at this stage. So my advice there is to think through what could be done at various stages of your project and think about how you could be innovative in making that happen within those scenarios. And within those scenarios, there are have been in the past, some very specific advice around gatherings of people. And now there'll be more detail on that coming out this week and early next week. So I can only encourage you to listen, and I have to give a shout out to RNZ. They are amazing. Their information, their interviews, their reporting is just fantastic, and it's the best source of information for all of us. Very up to date, very responsive, and constantly checking with the community and with experts that provide information that's useful. But yes, we can expect that international travel will be impacted for a substantial amount of time. So that is not a factor that you can put into your projects at this stage. Collaboration, however, either digitally or by other means with international compatriots, that's absolutely doable. So this grant can be applied for through our regular Arts Aligned portal, and it needs to comply, as I said, with the level of alert that we're at the stage that that we make the decision. And we're going to make those decisions as quickly as possible. So we are truncating our process to make that decision fast, so that we're not having a big time lag between when you apply and when we let you know whether or not you've got that grant. These grants will be assessed externally within a shortened time frame, as I said, using a streamlined version of our usual assessment process. Resilience grants. These emergency relief grants are as a contribution towards loss of income as a result of COVID-19. Applicants will need to demonstrate that their main source of income is derived normally from arts practice. That is, if you supply us with a relevant CV and evidence of information about what you have done in the past, that will be sufficient. You have to demonstrate that you have lost income in the period 1 March to 30 June, and you have to have received the government support for COVID-19. That is the Work and Income New Zealand Support Wage Subsidy. You also will need to meet our normal criteria, eligibility criteria, which is to do with track record, evidence of previous work, or training or specialised knowledge about your area of arts practice. Applications for this fund will be by email, not through the portal, with decisions made within 5 working days from the application being submitted. Short-term relief for investment clients. This is open to our existing investment clients and in addition to existing funding, with priority given to those materially negatively impacted. Funding will be prioritised towards addressing immediate financial needs of organisations who can demonstrate that they are not able to stabilise their organisation up to 30 June 2020 because they are already materially negatively impacted or will be materially negatively impacted for that period as the result of cancelled or deferred activities, including the impact of incurred costs without associated revenue. Investment clients are the 83 arts organisations which currently receive the Toi Tōtara Haimata and Toi Urukahati investment programs. And between them, they employ many artists and arts practitioners, including technical specialists, and who may have had to cancel or defer programs and carry the impact of those incurred costs without anticipated revenue. Investment clients applying for this short-term relief are expected to have considered how their reserves can be used and must have already received support also from the government's economic recovery package, including the WINS wage subsidy. We will be in touch with all of these investment clients and have been talking to them consistently through this period when the applications open. And clients are encouraged to talk to their lead investment services advisor if they want to discuss the opportunity before then. Application and assessment will take place up to over 20 working days, beginning as soon as the application is received, be by email, not through the portal. So that's some detail about the 3 funds that we have just opened. And I'm sure you've all got lots of questions, so I won't hold you up any further. But finally, I would like to offer some thoughts to all of us. We are all in this together. Creative New Zealand are here to help. But you, the sector, will be making the next bit happen. Artists help us all to feel, to think, to aspire. And the arts sector is a vital component of all of Aotearoa's recovery from COVID-19. Together we can contribute in an indispensable way to the future. I wish you all the very best. For awhatai lava, ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
Kia ora, Kath. That's some really beautiful words. I think it's quite difficult at this time, especially for arts and artists and producers, where we're traveling between the space of reflection and thinking about the opportunities for change, the opportunities to move forward. But on the other hand, we're also preparing ourselves to write a grant application, organising our children to do at-home learning, dealing with the practicalities of life as well. So thank you for your beautiful words you just shared. I will just launch straight into some questions for you, Kath, that have come through on the Facebook and YouTube Live. The first question is quite practical. Is the emergency relief grant available for self-employed contractors within or management? So not necessarily the artists themselves, but producers, managers. Can they apply?
Absolutely. It's for our terminology, arts practitioners covers anybody who's involved with the making, the presentation, the distribution, the managing, the administration. We consider all those people to be vital components of the arts sector. So yes.
Thank you. I have a question about if there are any sources of advice and support for visual artists who haven't gone for funding before. I guess perhaps they haven't gone for Creative New Zealand funding before. Where could they go for support for applying for an application to Creative New Zealand, either the process or are there other places they could access support and funding?
Yes, so part of the 83 organisations that we fund on a regular basis include artist spaces like Tautai, art space, object space, the physics room, Enjoy Gallery. And these places are all still, available and have some people within them who are highly skilled and knowledgeable, both about how to support practice, career development and funding. So a centre, but details obviously would be on their websites. And then the other places, our own people at Creative New Zealand. So if you ring in or lodge your question on the emergency relief email link, somebody will get back to you very quickly with answers specific to your art form. We have teams set up along that basis. So there's a team dedicated to visual arts. So they'll be able to answer a lot of your questions.
Thanks, Kath. I've now got a question about the Arts Continuity Grant. So currently it focuses on presenting new work or new projects, but many in the arts sector, large arts organisations, venues, etc., simply need money for business continuity, particularly for those who do not sit inside the tōtara or kahikatea stream. What are your plans to support these organisations?
Well, we don't have unlimited resources, so our primary focus is on the organisations that we currently do support. But we understand and appreciate that the sector is an ecosystem, and in order for it to be healthy and survive and indeed thrive, it all needs to work together. At the moment, our priority is on those organisations that we currently fund to stabilise them. But that doesn't mean that in the future we wouldn't look at other options if there were significant gaps. And in that regard, we would be also advocating strongly to government who are looking at a cultural recovery package to help within those areas where our resources won't be able to spread. But many venues are actually the responsibility of local authorities. So that would be my first port of call there, if that's the situation that you're in. If the governors or the owners of that organisation are local authorities, then it's their remit to keep those organisations alive and open and able to bounce back at the end of this period. But that's not to say that we wouldn't look at ways in which we could work together with local authorities.
Great, thanks. See how that would be a very difficult situation to be in when you're just trying to cover your overheads, but without necessarily having the income that you'd normally be expecting to have from other sources, not necessarily funding. So that's a real problem for many people to solve. I have a question about eligibility. Do arts groups need to have a legal status to apply?
No, not necessarily, and that's why we've used the word groups or collectives. So I gather you'd be talking about the Arts Continuity Grant there, the up to 50K. No, we don't ask for that. We do ask that you report back on your grant. So there is an accountability issue that you have to deal with within the proposal and within the reporting, but we don't insist on a legal entity.
Right, thank you. You have mentioned already, we had a question about can people talk about their funding application before submitting with an advisor, and I assume that that's still
yes.
the same.
Yes, you can, absolutely.
Brilliant. And I suggest people go to the website would be the best place to find the correct advisor to get in touch with. Okay, great. Yeah,
I think there's a centralized place, and then it's triaged out to the people who are the most qualified to answer your question. So it's very simple. There's one port of call, and then you'll be referred to somebody else. Yeah, I would advise everybody to go onto the website. As soon as you get in there, it comes up, COVID response. You can't miss it. Click through there and go to the frequently asked questions page, because that was updated yesterday, and most of the more regular questions that we think people are going to raise are answered there. But if there's still something, then yes, please get in touch.
Thank you. Will Creative New Zealand be open to online and or streaming projects, given the current situation, or will these kinds of projects still need to go via the screen funding bodies?
I think we're open to those now. I don't think there's anything that prevents us, and I think indeed we have funded some situations where, especially with our investment clients, where things have already been funded to be live streamed. So that's not a problem. What we don't do is fund feature films or broadcast things for commercial broadcast. So that's definitely the territory of the Film Commission. But if your project includes live streaming or a filmed component in order to distribute that material more broadly, then yes, that would be fine.
Great. I've got another question just about the timeline of the Arts Continuity Grant, where it says the project needs to be completed by September 2020. Can a production phase be completed by then, or does the work need to be shown publicly by then?
No, it's no, I should have made that very clear. It's the phase of the project that can be completed by 30 June 2020. So it can be part of the project. But what I would say is that there's no guarantee we would be able to fund the second phase.
Great. I've also got a question about the emergency relief grant with regards to the WINZ government subsidy. So the wage subsidy requirement, we're just trying to address a group that of people that potentially is being missed, and that's staff or employees who are not independent contractors and haven't been able to access the government subsidy. Are they able to still apply for the emergency relief grant?
Well, I think there's two things to think about there. One is, has the employer applied on their behalf, in which case they would be able to access the government subsidy. And my understanding is that the WINZ subsidy for employees applies to people who were legally working at the time. So if you had a job at the time where the COVID-19 hit and you were then out of a job as a result of that, you are actually eligible for that subsidy, as far as I'm aware.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something for people to explore further. And if anybody does have any success in that area, perhaps they could post online in the Aotearoa Arts Advocacy Facebook page, or in the Mana Moana page, or perhaps find some way to share that information, because I've seen there's a couple of questions here around the same thing, so it is an issue for some people.
Yeah, I think if you were made redundant or were unemployed for some reason before the timing of the introduction of the WINZ package, then you are still obviously eligible for the regular income, like benefit. And the stand down period has been, I think, actually reduced. So that's the other avenue to go down there.
Great. Thank you, Kath. I'm going to move on to some questions for David here around the advocacy space. The first question is just around these campaigns, including the campaign perhaps that you're talking about. But could we create, as part of these campaigns, a change in the attitudes of companies when it comes to paying creators? Is there an opportunity here to remove the exposure as an excuse for not paying? I guess we've seen a few opportunities come up for artists to create content which may or may not be chosen to be used, may or may not be paid for. And so here we have a situation again where our artists are working for free.
Excuse me, thanks for the question. Yeah, it's really important, I think, for us to be able to press that message strongly. I think especially with businesses who are engaging creatives to do work, I think there is still that prevailing attitude that it's exposure, look at all the wonderful promotion you'll get out of doing this for us, which is a really destructive attitude for the arts sector. We know from our sustainable careers research that we did last year that the sector is poorly supported anyway in the round, which is, and it's really tough to forge a career. So that's not helped at all by companies that devalue the creative, the value of creative work. So absolutely, with one of our key audiences for our advocacy is the business and business community. So that, yeah, for sure, that's a message we wanted to be wanting to press them. And I'm sorry, I should have added when I was talking earlier about our advocacy campaign, all our artists who are kindly contributing to that aren't just doing it out of the kindness of their heart. We're paying them for their valued creative work. So that was really important to us at CNZ too, to provide a good financial payment to those artists who are so giving of their time and so generous and inspiring with their work.
Great. David, there's a note here that the government has made a comment that they would be looking how they might need to support sporting organisations that rely on revenue from gaming trusts. Has Creative New Zealand been speaking with the government about the same issue for arts organisations? Might the government provide an additional funding package to fill the gap that will be left as a result of gaming trust funding having stopped?
Yeah, for sure. We've made that message clear in both through our work with the ministry on its work on developing what might be a broader cultural support package, but also directly to ministers as well, about the really broad support base for the arts sector that exists between central government through agencies like ourselves, through local government, foundations, trusts, philanthropists, business, communities, etc. It's a really dispersed network of support, but it's really fragile as well. And we're starting to see that in terms of just signals from those sectors, sponsorship being dropped, trusts who rely a lot on large endowments and investments, so are very affected by changes in the global economy, through to local authorities who want to knuckle down and invest on what they see as essential services and what's the place of the arts in that. So definitely we're pushing that message that the sector is a broad support base, but each of those pillars that support it are fragile. A wider government response needs to take those things into account. Otherwise, the support base from the arts it could be severely eroded, even into the recovery phase as well.
Thanks, David. That's a good moment to move on to a couple of questions that have a regional focus. Would you be able to elaborate on the advice provided to local government on how to support the arts sector regionally?
Regionally from to councils within a region. Our advice will go out to all councils. It's really important that the 67 territorial authorities have a good understanding of the pressures that are facing the arts sector at the moment, the fragility of our sector from that support base that I was talking about just before. And also there are a lot of agencies scattered around. We have a great network of regional arts development agencies that are fighting the good fight in that space as well. So really wanting to press onto those decision makers that the arts can't be left behind or shouldn't be left behind. They're vital to the people who live in communities. They're vital for keeping communities together, keeping those communities in productive work, for the identities of those communities, a vast range of things. So yeah, there's certainly a role for us all to cluster together regionally and to press those messages to councils and to mayors, to the management of those councils as well, who often make a lot of the decisions at a lower level, to make sure they're all clear that the arts do play a significant role in their communities and will continue to do so, moving out of the emergency and into the recovery phase of things.
We've got a question here, David, about which relates to the National Advocacy campaign, which they say sounds great that you're launching this Friday. How can regional arts marketing initiatives interface with this national advocacy campaign?
I think what the national campaign does is provide just a bit of a framework and a bit of a structure that people can hook into for support. We like the idea of being thankful for art, showing the many ways in which the arts has an impact on our lives, the key role that artists have to play in surfacing these ideas, provoking, challenging, creating joy in people's lives. I think the kind of regional initiatives could look to the national campaign as perhaps a bit of a framework for how they might deliver regionally or locally. It is very broad, as you might expect with a national campaign. So hopefully there'll be some useful pointers in there, and we're happy to talk to regional groups as well about how we could link those things up together. Of course, any successful regional campaign has to take a lot into account the things that are happening regionally or happening locally, what's important to those communities as well. So some kind of drawing on us for inspiration if we're so lucky that we inspire people through the campaign. But yeah, as I said, we're more than happy to talk to people about that. We have an advocacy email address that our wonderful new advocacy team are maintaining, which is just advocacy@creativenz.govt.nz. So yeah, more than happy to hear from people with great ideas for advocacy.
Thanks, David. I'll just come back to Kath and Karen now with the timing of projects and the timing of the grants, and in particular with regards to the phase 2 of grants. Karen, could you give us some information about when is the Arts Council meeting next, and what's the process for discussing phase 2?
Sure. So the Arts Council are meeting at the end of April, and the focus of that meeting will be on the second phase. And Kath talked earlier on about the need for us to be continually reinventing ourselves and our processes. And I guess we're running a fine line between wanting to just keep one step ahead so we can let the sector know what's happening, but also make good, strong decisions, because I'm sure many of you have heard the lockdown lingo about this being a marathon, not a sprint. And so phase 2 very much has to focus on what does the marathon ahead of us look like, what's going to be sustainable. So we've got lots of work ahead of us, which is why it was important to get the first phase of the package out now, and then start working on what the rest of the time is going to look like.
Thanks, Karen. Kath, I've got a question here about projects that start in September 2020. And there's one here in particular that starts in September and runs through to June 2021 in 2 phases. Are they able to apply in this round? When might we expect the new funding rounds, the next rounds with phase 2 to be announced?
Okay, I can't answer the second question because we haven't made that decision, except to say that I'm very conscious that we don't want there to be a lag in the supply. So we'll be working very hard to get information out about phase 2 as early as possible. In terms of the stages of the project, as I said before, if there's a stage of your project that can be legitimately completed within the constrictions of COVID-19 at the moment, and it can be done by September 30, then it's absolutely eligible. We just can't guarantee that we would be able to support the second phase.
Got some more questions, just practical questions about the funding. Just a question, I guess, about budgets and Creative New Zealand's seat subsidy. So just with regarding subsidising costs of tickets, if gatherings of under 100 will be able to go ahead at some point, does this mean that tickets for shows will need to increase? Will CNZ be willing to further subsidise the cost of tickets, as per that per seat subsidy?
Right. Rate? Well, we don't specifically subsidise the cost of tickets now, but what we do is look at the overall budget for something, which includes the realistic income that can be generated from that project. And if that realistic income is predicated on a certain ticket price, we will weigh that up in the balance of probability based on our experience and fund accordingly. So if your project has a budget which is, very expensive to produce, and then also there's a very low possibility of income coming from ticket sales, then we would need to compare that with other projects that are able to do that either at a cheaper rate or less expensively. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't support it, but it means that we interrogate it very specifically to see the value of that for the audience. So that's a complicated way of explaining something. It's actually reasonably straightforward. There's a cost and there's an income. We're part of the income, and we make those decisions based on the value of the worth and the quality of the project and the end result for those audiences. So the answer is sometimes we do have a very high per ticket subsidy within the grant, and sometimes we're funding things that are free, so coming from box office.
Great, thank you. Just like to take this moment to thank everybody who's sending in their questions. We are not short of questions. It's really fantastic. This is the time. This is for you, an information session for all of us. So all questions we'll be trying to get through. I've got a question here, just some questions, I guess, around eligibility of ideas for the continuity grant. And I've just lost the one. Oh no, here's a grant. Could it cover things like video interviews as an initial stage towards a larger digital project?
Yes, yes, it's covered by the term research. If the work that you're planning requires you to do research based on interviewing or any kind of interrogation of your practice or other people's ideas, then it's eligible as part of the costs of that project.
Great. Now, if I was a community performing arts venue, not council managed, could I apply for an arts continuity grant to run its performing arts education online?
I can't think of a reason why not.
Great, thank you. I've got a couple of other questions here. One just around what is happening with the existing programs or the funds that were suspended, or things like the new Regional Arts Fund.
Yeah. So part of our thinking around stage 2 is what of the existing portfolio funds that we had could be reconfigured or reframed to be able to operate within the COVID-19 environment that exists in the country at the time. So one of the reasons why we had to suspend our previous funds, apart from wanting to redirect all our resources to this immediate response, is because much of it couldn't have been done within the alert level that we were at. So we need to think about how we would be able to reconfigure the criteria for all of those funds for them to be made fit for purpose in that environment. And that's part of the task that we'll be getting on with next.
Right. I've got a question here, which I guess in regards to the special Zoom online hui for Māori and Pacific creatives. There's a question here, if there are specific measures in place to support Asian artists at this time. This is a community who has been impacted physically and emotionally by the side effects of racism during which the pandemic has exacerbated. Will there be any other special support for Asian artists and community?
We don't have any plans for that at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be part of a response. Obviously, our funds are directed towards the development, distribution and presentation of New Zealand art to New Zealand audiences of whatever ethnicity or demography that they belong to, as opposed to recompensing people for perceived disadvantage. I'm not sure how we would respond to that question, to that problem adequately within our present setup, but I do hear that, and it's certainly something that we can factor into our thinking as we go forward.
Kia ora. Thank you, Kath, and thank you to the person who put that question forward. It's really about impacts on specific communities within our arts sector. Right, back to arts continuity grants questions, which we have got many. Again, back to the funding in terms of showing other level of funding and or in-kind support. I guess there's some concern here, Kath, around the level of other revenue that people are going to be able to show in their applications, and how much needs to be in there in order for the application to be taken seriously.
Oh, there's no formula for that. So we don't have, a sort of set amount that we expect people to provide. We just like to see that if there is some, that it's been taken into consideration. It helps us because it means that other people care about the project as well. But we also totally recognise that in the current environment, that the ability for the sector to generate that additional income is very constrained. So people aren't going to be disadvantaged if they can't provide that information about additional income.
Okay, thank you. Can an arts organisation apply for an individual artist on their behalf to create an opportunity for paid work?
I need to know a bit more about that question, sorry, before I could give an accurate answer.
There's no detail there. I guess I'm unsure whether the individual artist has an idea that they're working with this arts organisation, or if arts organisations are just trying to generate opportunities for them.
Okay, yeah. Well, either one of those could be fine. But the thing to know that is, when you are the applicant, you are the one who's responsible for delivering that project. So you will be reporting on that project to us if you're the applicant. But yes, you can apply on behalf of a group or an individual artist for them to complete work. But in effect, you'd be acting as the commissioner of that work in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Another question around the Arts Continuity Grant. And this, I guess, is talking about the different scaffolding between level 1, 2, 3 or 4 possibilities for your project. Could the fund support a project that is designed around social distancing? Would that be considered at this stage?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because I think that is going to be a reality no matter what. Whatever level we're at, we're in some form of social distancing. I think that's probably a given.
Yeah. Now, if you're an artist or an arts organisation who has a project underway that's been postponed, something that's currently in development, where nothing has changed in the project, but the delay will require extra rehearsal or associated cost, will there be an avenue to explore top-up funding for projects like this? Or could they apply for a continuity grant in this instance?
So I assume that's someone who's already received funding for a project and then can't continue with it for the reasons that we've explained. We do have specific group of people at Creative New Zealand who can help you through those individual situations and answer your questions. So my best advice there is to go to that email address or phone number.
Great, thank you. Karen, I'm going to come to you with a couple of questions here. There is a question which has been having a lot of comments on the thread around could the Arts Council suggest an official artist's wage? which I
Yeah.
guess is, I don't know if it's a resurrection of the PACE scheme or actually just a universal wage for artists.
Yeah, look, we've known that there's something people have been interested in for a while, and certainly in the past, we have suggested when people are applying for funding that for at least a minimum $25 an hour for artist wages, and that's because it's important to us that people are valuing artists in a sustainable way. We've been doing a bit more work on that. You might have seen some work we did with New Zealand On Air last year, looking at the sustainability of careers in the arts. So certainly something worth considering. I'll take it to the table for our discussions, but I'm glad to see a lot of interest in this area.
Thanks, Karen. Another question for you, it's just around how is the Arts Council approaching using its reserves when we don't know the longer term impact of COVID-19?
Yeah, so good question to ask an accountant. So, you know, we've had some reserves there for a rainy day and it's now raining. So we've been able to apply some of those initially to this phase one. But yeah, you're right, we don't know the full extent of what's ahead of us. So it's incumbent on us to just be prudent with the remaining reserves that we do have, and to think about how we're best going to apply those for the long haul. We've got quite a way ahead of us yet.
Thanks, Karen. David, I'm going to come to you with a couple of questions that have come through on the feed here. First, around the advocacy, what is your strategy for getting more New Zealand-made arts online streaming creative works into the mainstream so it can earn more directly? Arts organisations are very reliant on purse, and as our country could be going into a recession, do you have any long-term commercial strategy if government funding is reduced?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'll take the last point first. There's certainly no indication that government funding will be reduced for the arts sector. I guess I would say there too that, as I talked about earlier, the pressure is really going to come from the degree to which those pillars of other support that hold up the arts sector are affected. The signs are concerning at the moment from what we're hearing, but that sort of longer term impact is still to be determined. So I mentioned that that's an important point that we've raised with the government about the fragility of the support system for the arts sector. CNZ on its own can't do everything. So it's really important to be able to have a good understanding and a good assessment of the impacts on those other funders. There's definitely a place for getting more New Zealand-made arts into the mainstream as well. So that boosted live initiative that we were talking about earlier was our first initial step to help bring some of those ideas to life. We knew that we had to act fast on that and to support the Arts Foundation to stand up that functionality on the boosted website and deliver to that. So yeah, absolutely, that'll be New Zealand-made artists and earning directly from doing that. So it's exciting, it's scary, but we'll be pushing the messages and getting those messages out there about the great acts, which I'm sure are going to, and artists who will be signing up for the boosted live gigs that will be being put on.
Great. And David, will you be releasing the advocacy campaign detailed program to the sector to link into?
Yeah, it's really important. It's a really fast advocacy campaign. Usually, if it's one of the having a large campaign, we haven't really done that before, so we're sort of feeling our way through it. We've got a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of content, great stories, great work, and reflections as well being generated by artists and influencers. So that's still being done at the moment. We have a locked down kind of schedule of what's going to be going up on what day. So I guess the best advice would be to keep an eye out on CNZ's social media. We'll be posting fresh content close to every day. If you like it, if you want to share the messages in it or the inspiration you draw from it, we'd love you to share it with your networks. Tag your own response using the hashtag TFA. And yeah, to get the messages out there that the more people who are sending some love and support to the arts sector through sharing the impact that arts have on their lives, the better.
Thanks, David. There's a question here as well about how will regional organisations be updated of these advocacy conversations, and who are Creative New Zealand advocating with regionally?
Sure. Well, we have a really good relationship with the regional arts development agencies. So they're not in every region in New Zealand, unfortunately, not like sport, but those regions that do have agencies, we're in good contact with. I know they're all thinking about and are already showing to their communities how they're supporting the arts through this difficult time, but also some of those broader big picture advocacy messages as well. As I mentioned, it'll be really important for us to be working with them, and we'll keep doing so to get relevant messages to the decision makers in those unique regional contexts.
Thank you, David. Kath, I'm going to come back to you again with some more questions that are coming through about the arts grants. Just a first question is around the use of the $16 million response package, and the questions come in. Is there a rough split between how that $16 million has been spread across the Arts Continuity Grant, the Emergency Relief Grant, and the Short-Term Relief for Investment clients?
There has been some preliminary allocation. I don't have it at the top of my head, and what I would say about it is that it is very preliminary and is not based on demand. So we have the capacity to move the dollars around between the various components depending on the demand. We just don't know what the demand is going to be. So it's a bit difficult to allocate specific amounts. But for the purposes of keeping track of it, we have made some provisional allocations. I just can't tell you what they are.
Thanks, Kath. And some more practical questions here just about what's eligible or not. And also a question, can you put in as many applications as you like?
No, you can only apply once to any of the opportunities in the period.
Great, thank you. A question here, which is quite a little bit similar to one that from earlier. Is video production considered an art form supported by Creative New Zealand as visual arts, such as music videos, short films, feature films, TV shows?
No, TV shows and feature films, short films are the provision of either in the news and broadcast music for broadcast is either the remit of New Zealand On Air or the New Zealand Film Commission. But we do support the making of screen content within art form specific areas. So for instance, in the visual arts, if you are a digital artist working with film, like Lisa Rehana, then obviously we support that.
Thank you. A question around the definition of new work. Does it just mean new compositions or writings or choreography, or does it also include new presentations of existing or already composed or written work?
Yeah, I've had a look at that wording, and it is quite specific that it's about creation and or presentation of new work. But I actually think that within the following bullet points, underneath that, development of arts practice, innovation and opportunities for access for people to access, we could easily include work that has already been previously made but reconfigured for the new environment. So yeah, we might change that wording so it's a bit less prescriptive.
Great, thank you. Just a scenario here about the Emergency Relief Grant. If you were a small business, say 2 people, who provided production services into the arts, And you got the wage subsidy from the government through the business to pay 2 people. Can you still apply for the emergency relief grant?
Yes, because you can apply on behalf of individuals who were in your employ to top up that the WINS payment, if you were eligible for the WINS payment and they were working in the then yes, you would be eligible.
And also a question about contracted events managers delivering projects in the performing space. We may have answered this one right at the top, actually, around, yes, those people are eligible for the emergency relief grant. People working as events managers, producers.
Yeah, if they're producers, managers, marketers, anything associated with the presentation of the arts, they would be eligible, provided they meet the other criteria.
Great. Now, this is amazing. There's lots of questions coming through. A question here about if you're working as a collective and you've potentially got 2 projects. We've talked about that once, but could 2
only apply for once within each of the areas.
But could an individual apply on behalf of a collective?
Yes,
2 individuals.
they can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Can an artist apply to the Arts Continuity Grant to fund postgraduate study in their field, which would extend past the September deadline?
No, I don't think so. We do have some guidelines around postgraduate study and what is eligible and what is not. And generally speaking, we don't fund tertiary training unless the course is based offshore and it's not available within New Zealand. So in some cases, we have funded scholarships, for instance, to study at offshore performing arts courses, for instance. But yeah, no, I would check the guidelines, but on the basis of that question, I would say no.
So just another question there, excuse me, about are New Zealand artists who are living overseas eligible to apply to these grants?
At this stage, not. They're specific to our community here in New Zealand. If someone is resident offshore, then we would encourage them to access whatever package that constituency is providing for the arts.
And then just a practical question about the emergency relief grant, which is calculated at $25 per hour for either part-time or full-time work, less the amount received from the COVID-19 government WINS wage subsidy. So the question is, how does this work with the wage subsidy? Are people basically applying to Creative New Zealand to top up?
Correct. You have to provide us with evidence that you've received it, and you need to tell us at what level you received it. So there's 2 levels. One is for part-time work under 20 hours and full-time work as over 20 hours. And we simply top up the remainder to the $25 an hour over the 12 weeks.
And is that part of Creative New Zealand acknowledging that the government wage subsidy is less than what Creative New Zealand deemed to be satisfactory wage for artists?
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Now, just scrolling through the wonderful questions here, and I will swing over to you, David. And this is a question about philanthropy and leadership in the philanthropic sector for the arts. Is Creative New Zealand in collaboration with philanthropists or Philanthropy New Zealand and members to grow a national strategic approach to philanthropy at this time?
Not yet, but I think that will come into the second phase of our advocacy response. So you would have heard me talk about those different pillars of support for the arts sector, and philanthropy and philanthropists, private givers, are definitely one of them. So I can absolutely see the need for us to work with philanthropic bodies, people like Philanthropy New Zealand, like the Arts Foundation, to come together and develop a common approach to promoting private giving and philanthropy for the arts. Again, it's one of those areas that we're just not quite sure what the impact will be on that, or the response will be from the philanthropic community for the arts during this time. Obviously, we're promoting the importance of continuing to support the arts through these tough times and into recovery as well. So yeah, it's that philanthropic group is one of our key audiences under our advocacy strategy. So yeah, I can absolutely see a place for us to all be working together to press those messages home.
Thank you. Just coming back to the wage subsidy and the idea of a universal basic income for artists, we've got a lot of people in the chat talking about the PACE scheme. Karen, if I could perhaps come to you and to ask if you know anything more about the PACE scheme.
No, but very happy to find out a bit more about it if that's of interest to people. But it's fair to say the concept of making sure that artists' time is valued to the point that they can have a sustainable career is a strategic focus for us. I mentioned earlier on the research that we'd started. So it's definitely on our radar, and acknowledging the interest here about taking that further.
Great, thank you, Karen. Conversation about going local and going super local. In fact, a lot of our artists, just in terms of our ability to move around the country currently, is completely limited, and that perhaps there will be a real focus on creating art with our local artists and within local communities. There's a question here perhaps for David and Kath around the Creative Communities scheme, and perhaps would you consider asking local authorities to increase their creative communities funding threshold, which I believe is currently $2,000? And would you provide funding for this?
Actually, I don't think that's true. I mean, certainly we don't insist on an amount that they fund. That just happens to be about the average across the whole country of individual grants. But there is no constraint from our point of view on them funding more. So the Creative Communities scheme is devolved to local authorities. So they make the decisions within our broad criteria, but our criteria don't include a maximum amount of grant.
Thanks, Kath. I can see that the conversation here is around grass and flax roots community artists and organisations who perhaps aren't normally applying directly to Creative New Zealand to be funded for activities in our local areas. So that's will be a very interesting development, I think, for all of us as we're working more closely within our local communities in the arts.
Yeah, and it's one of the primary way, well, it is the primary way we deliver to local communities. But as I said, those contracts that we have with all 67 local authorities, they administer them themselves. So it's within their power to make decisions about, how much they fund any one particular project for. And they'll all be making their own decisions currently about how they can continue to distribute that funding. We do have an amazing staff member who is in charge of keeping all those relationships going, and I'm sure she'd be able to answer this question more fully than I can right now. So it might be one of those ones where we take it offline and respond in writing later.
Great, thank you, Kath. David, I've got another question for you as we're looking again to working within our regions. For regions that don't have a regional arts development agency, what will advocacy look like and with who in the region? And what would you recommend, David, if within our own region we don't have an agency?
I think it's yep, absolutely. I think there's sort of 6 or 7 regions, so that leaves a lot of regions that don't have an agency. So I mean, there's a lot of power in individuals coming together to be able to advocate. So if you have a look on our website in the development and resources section, we have an advocacy toolkit in there, which gives some ideas of the messages that people could give, how they could give them, and to who those audiences are, who you want to affect change. That's one of the things about our definition of advocacy, is that you're promoting or supporting a cause because you're wanting to see an action come back at the other end. So there's a really useful way to think about it. Who do I want to get this message to, but also what do I want them to do as a result of me giving that to them. So that could be around more funding, that could be around opening up spaces or giving up free space, a wide variety of things that would help the arts sector in the way that's relevant to the stage of the COVID response that we're in. So we're more than happy to help with advice on that as well. So again, if you've got questions about advocacy, what some approaches might be, how we could work together to help you out, then please send them through to advocacy@creativenz.govt.nz, and our awesome advocacy team will be able to help you out with some of those suggestions. Yeah.
Great, thank you. There's a suggestion here that perhaps there could be a Dropbox or Google Drive with the various arts advocacy campaign elements and collateral, so that arts organisations could share, ensuring that we've got the same message, or perhaps a calendar of activity. And I guess that's one of the difficulties at this time, is being coordinated. In some ways we're at the tip of each other's fingers, but there's many different conversations going on, and how can we all coordinate together?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great suggestion. I'll pass it on to the advocacy team as well, because I think it's important that we make it as easy as possible to share the messages and the great work that's being created and generated by artists for the campaign. So yep, for sure, I'll pass that to the team and get them to look into it.
Great, David. And just another question there about, does your advocacy strategy include aiming to have art slots on TV news and mainstream news bulletins, like sport has? I've seen this come up a few times. The sports news continues, although there's no sport currently happening.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the gradual creeping up of arts and creative stories in the main news hours. There was a great one last night, just for example, about a collective of Māori musicians who've created an awesome waiata about being in lockdown. So I think there's kind of, we're dancing around each other a little bit about that. I think the major news outlets know that these stories are important, especially now. Whether we can get them to the next step of saying, right, we need a dedicated slot, will be an interesting question as well. It's one of the elements of our advocacy campaign, is to really press the message that the importance of the arts in times like this. There are great stories, and we really need to give space, free up space within these media channels to be able to tell those stories. Like you said, it's kind of weird seeing the same 15-minute sports bulletin each night talking about how things aren't happening. So yeah, definitely let's get them talking about things that are happening, and all the amazing work that artists continue to do while we're in lockdown.
Kia ora. Well, I can see that we're coming towards the end of our time. I'm going to pass over to the panelists for a final closing thought each. But in the meantime, there are a few questions about the continuity grant and the emergency relief grant that we haven't got to. Kath, could you share with us again the email address where people can send through? Because I would really recommend that if you have had a question that hasn't been answered, to send it through to the Creative New Zealand team, and they will come back to you on your question about the grant.
Yeah. So the thing to do is to go onto our website, creativenewzealand.govt.nz, and click on the link there, which is COVID-19 response at creativenz.govt.nz.
Kia ora, Kath. And do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share today?
No, I'm not particularly. I'm overwhelmed by the number of questions, and I'm very conscious that I may not have done a brilliant job of answering some of them. But please know that we have this record, and if we know who you are, or even if we don't, there might be a way in which we can post answers to these on a drop-in page or something on the website where or we could just add them to our frequently asked questions when we have formulated our responses. So that might be the easiest thing for us to do. Sorry.
Thanks, Kath. David, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to add as we close up our session today?
Sure, just to say thanks. Thanks to everyone out there who's doing amazing work, even under these most ridiculous and stressful of circumstances. Which is really inspiring to me is just the bureaucrat in Wellington, that all this creative output is happening and flourishing, even though we're stuck in our bubbles at the moment. So big shout out to the arts community for all the awesome work they do. One of my favorite whakatauki is one from Ngāi Tahu, which talks about the act of creating a polished work of art out of pounamu. So I might end with that. Mā te pohe wā, mā te aua hoki, ka whakapuaki nā kura e huna ana, which means with imagination and creativity, a hidden jewel can be revealed. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from everyone out there about our advocacy work, your reaction to it, and seeing those hidden jewels that are going to be coming up within the next few months. So kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you, David. Karen, thank you very much for your time today. Do you have any final thoughts to share with us?
Yeah, just two. First, because there's been so much interest in it, just reiterating the fact that, yeah, we certainly here thought that the PACE scheme worked really well. Having artists in the real win-win. So there's a format ready to go, and so we need to think about how we what we do with that, having had that experience. Secondly, I can just see from all the questions, and I hope you see from all the questions and the responses from the team, that how prepared the team are to be agile and flexible, and that in the end, CNZ is here to help the sector do what it does best, and that is to produce art and to be artists. And in this time of uncertainty, where there's some things that we just don't know what they're going to look like, we're feeling our way too, but we're prepared to work alongside you. So thanks so much, everybody, today for your interest. I know there's a lot of questions we didn't get through, and hopefully we will, as Kath said, and wishing you all the best out there from those of us at the Arts Council table. And finally, just a big shout out to the CNZ team, hoping that you do get some days off soon, because everyone's been working really, really hard. And kia ora, Delena, for your role here today.
Kia ora, Karen. Well, thank you so much to our three wonderful panelists, Karen, David and Kath, for your time today and the information that you've shared. A big, huge thank you to all of you out there who've been watching online on Facebook Live and YouTube. Thank you for your questions. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes here, Paul and Jasmine from Creative New Zealand, Louise, Heather and Francis and Helena from PANNZ and Auckland Live. Just a reminder that there are some more Zoom Hui Zui tomorrow for Pacific Arts practitioners at 11 a.m, hosted by Creative New Zealand, and on Friday for Ngā Toi Māori at 11 a.m. Please do join those, and you can ask further questions with some arts advisors there. You can find the information about those on the Creative New Zealand Facebook page and website. And just to let you know that PANNZ and Auckland Live will continue with this online Hui series next Monday, the 20th of April at 11 a.m. We will be joined by Boni Tukiwaho, who is the Kai Whakahaere of Taurima Vibes Limited and the director of the Auckland Fringe Festival. And she's the artistic director of the Auckland Arts Festival, in a conversation about disruption, sustainability and well-being. So today I'll close this session with a karakia. Me karakia tātou. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana, kia tere te kai rohi rohi I mua I tō huarahi. Mauri ora kia tātou katoa. Stay safe, stay well. your time today. Ngā mihi.
Mā te wā.